Hey guys, my name is William and I'm going to be your instructor for this course. I've been creating games, apps, and websites for many years now, but my true passion lies with teaching others how to create them even more. If you have not checked out our official website, redfoolstudio.com, go right ahead. We have plenty more content just like this on there. Now without further ado, let's jump right in and begin the course. Alright, so in this section we're going to do the setup for our game. We're going to start off creating a new 2D Unity project. Then we're going to go ahead and create a couple folders, one for art, one for prefabs, one for scenes, and then also one for scripts. Last but not least, we're going to set the screen size for our game. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Alright, so in Unity Hub, we're going to go ahead and create our new project. We're going to go up to the top right New Project button, select that. Then we're going to go ahead and select the 2D core at the top. Perfect. On the right, let's give our project a name. I'm going to call this Endless Runner. There we go. Make sure it's in the correct location you want. Select your cloud organizations. Then also you can turn off Connect to Cloud if you want to. That's up to you. Then go ahead and just hit Create Project. Awesome. Let's let that load. Alright, looks like my project loaded up. Perfect. Now we currently have a scenes folder in our main assets folder. Now we need to add a couple more in here. So let's add those real quick. Let's right click over here. Let's go up to Create. Let's go to Folder. Let's call this one Art, capital A. Awesome. Let's create another one also. Right click, go up to Create, go to Folder. We'll call this one Prefabs, capital P. Awesome. Let's go ahead again, right click. Let's go to Create. Let's go all the way up to Folder. This one would be for our scripts, so let's go ahead, capital S, Scripts. Awesome. All right, perfect. Next thing we need to do is adjust the screen size. So let's go ahead and make sure you're in the Game tab right here, not the Scenes tab, okay? So in Game tab, we're going to select this right here, which is going to be a drop down for all our screen sizes, okay? Now the first thing you want to do is actually turn off this low resolution aspect ratios. Basically, this is going to help it be at the highest resolution for your computer, which is kind of nice. It's going to make all the assets and art be what it should be, okay? So make sure that's turned off. Next thing we're going to do is change to 16:9 aspect. Now if you don't have this, you can simply add it right down here by selecting the plus button. Make sure the type though is changed to aspect ratio, and then you can put 16 and 9 for the X and Y value, okay? I'm going to hit cancel though because I already have it here. I'm just simply going to select it, and there we go. Awesome. Alright, so far so good. Alright, so in this section we're going to go over all the imports for our game. I've attached the imports to the description of the video, so go ahead and download those. It's going to be a zip file, so make sure you right click and hit extract all before dragging and dropping into the game. Alright, once you do that, we're going to go ahead and ensure the sizing is correct. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Alright, so I've already downloaded the zip, extracted all the images, and dragged and dropped each one into the art folder. So make sure you've done that. Once you do, go ahead, double click into your art folder. You should have two images, a square and also a triangle image. Let's go ahead and select the square image first. We're going to change a couple things for it. Make sure the sprite mode is set to single. We're going to go ahead and change the pixels per unit though to 16. We're going to also change the filter mode to point, and all point does is basically make it match the pixels a little better. So make sure you have that set. And last but not least, we're going to change the compression from normal quality to none, okay? Make sure you set that and go ahead and hit apply, all right? Awesome. All right, let's go ahead and go to the scene view and see how it looks. Let's drag and drop it into the scene, and it should look just like that, okay? Perfect. Let's go ahead and select triangle now. We're going to change a couple things for triangle. We're going to actually set the sprite mode to multiple. All right, and we're doing that just so we can get the nice little square around the image. So it looks like that, okay? Awesome. Next up is we're actually going to keep the pixels per unit at 100, unlike the square, which was at 16, so keep it at 100 here. We are though going to change the filter mode to point, so it kind of matches up with the square style. And last but not least, we're going to change the compression to none, okay? Make sure you have that set. Go ahead, hit apply, and there you go. Now let's go ahead and drag and drop this into the scene. It's going to be a little big, so we're going to have to adjust it. Make sure you're selecting it right over here. Once you're selecting it, let's change the scale. So we're going to change the X value to 0.17, and we're also going to change the Y value to 0.17. All right, so you should have two images that look just like this. Once you do though, let's go ahead and highlight both of them and move them out of the scene view, okay? Awesome. All right, make sure you save. Alright, so in this section, we're going to create the menu background. We're going to start off by creating the background objects, then we're going to align each object, and then we're going to go ahead and add a particle system to add some effects in the background. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. let's start off creating the ground. So let's go ahead and select our current square we have here. Let's Control D for it, and we're going to put that somewhere up there. But before we go ahead and start creating the ground, we need to create an empty object to put all the ground objects inside of. So let's go ahead and right click over here, create empty, and we can name this new object ground. Alright, now we can go ahead and drag and drop in the new square we have into the ground object. Perfect. Let's go ahead and make the position of the ground square 0x and 0y, so it's exactly on top of the parent object ground. Awesome. Let's move that up here as well. Oop, looks like I didn't move the ground. Let me Control Z that. Make sure to move the actual ground parent object up, just like that. Awesome. So we have both objects together. All right. Next thing we need to do is, of course, make the actual ground layer. So we need to make it kind of a little bit longer than the actual screen. So I'm going to go ahead and move it over here, and then we can track and see how long it is. So let's go ahead now and select the square. Before we start duplicating the square block, let's go ahead and set a couple things. First thing we want to add is a new tag, and that's going to be block. I already added that tag. For you to add that tag, simply go to the add tag, click on the little plus button and add block there, and then save that, and then go back to the square, open up that tagging and select the block. Alright, awesome. Once you have the block tag selected, let's go ahead and add a couple other things. Let's add another component. We're going to add a box collider 2D. We're going to actually have two box collider 2Ds on this, one for the actual box itself and then one for a triggering effect that we're going to use for our player touching the blocks and changing the colors. So the first block, the only thing we want to change for it is we want to go ahead and set the size. Instead of the x equaling 1, we want to do 0.9. And then for the y, we also want to set that to 0.9, okay? And you'll see why this is important later on. The next thing, of course, is add the next box collider 2D. So now we have two box collider 2Ds on the same square. We want to go ahead and keep this one at the value of x1 and y1. But the one thing we are going to change is this is trigger. Make sure that's checked, okay? Awesome. So once you have that there, you should be good. Next thing we're going to do is, of course, start the duplication. So let's select the main one here, Control D, move that over. Make sure you're still holding down Control when you use the move tool so it doesn't move it without the same distance. And then all you want to do is make sure it's still connected. So you just want to make sure there's no line in between, okay? So I'm going to keep going until I have a couple more. And then to make the whole thing faster, we can simply just select all of them and then Control D them to move them over. All right, I'm going to do like one more, I think. Let's go ahead and just hold the bottom one here, hold down Shift, and then select the top one there. Perfect. Then simply Control D, and there we go. We have a duplication of all those. Awesome. And the same length. Perfect. Let's go ahead and Control D again. And there we go. Awesome. So now we have the good length for the ground. Doesn't have to be perfect or exactly the same as mine, just as long as it's about the same length, okay? Awesome. All right, so once we have all that there, then what we want to do is we want to simply move it down. So make sure you're selecting the main ground object here. And what we're going to do is put it at somewhere such as maybe a y value of -1. I think that should be a good one because we want it right below the center, which is that little camera symbol there. Select game view, and there we go. That looks pretty good. I like it. Let's go back to scene. Next thing we got to do is, of course, get the main player. So let's go ahead and select the main block we have over here. And what I want to do is Control D it. Awesome. And we're going to go ahead and simply put it right in the middle. So let's make the x value 0 and also the y value 0. Okay, awesome. Then one other thing we could do also is give it a little bit of a turningness. So it kind of looks like it's starting off to turn right when you start the game. So let's go to game view. Let's select the square here. Let's change this to player so we know which block it is specifically. Awesome. We also want to go ahead and give it a box collider as well. Box collider 2D. Awesome. And I think we can keep that just like that. What we do want to do though is change the color. So let's go ahead and make the color a teal color. So I'm going to bring it over to teal here. And I'm simply going to make sure the R is 0, the G is 1, the B is 1, and the A is 1. Okay? Should give you this nice little teal color. Awesome. Next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and rotate it a little bit. So let's turn the Z value. Let's turn it and just till it's about tilted a little bit. So something like that. Okay. We could move it up a little bit too. I think it's a little low. So let's go ahead and take that Y value and move it just a little bit up. Okay. Not too much, but just enough. Awesome. Next thing we got to do, of course, is make the ones that already have touched it, which is going to be the ones from here to here. I'm simply going to highlight them all and go to the color button here. Select the little tool they have and select our main block so they all go to the same color. Awesome. So it should look something like this so far. Perfect. Awesome. Alright, so now that we have that there, we're going to need one more game object for the spawning of the ground. So let's go ahead and create one. Let's go down, create empty. We're going to call this ground spawner. Awesome. Then what we want to do is make sure the ground spawner is on the same Y value as the ground, because when it spawns it, it's going to put it on the same Y and X value. So let's go ahead and make sure it's the same one. So we did -1 for the ground, so we got to make sure this is also at -1. Perfect. And then simply for now, we can move it over here. We will change the X value specifically on it eventually, but I think for now, I think it should be good. We'll put it right about here. We might change it later on, but I think that should be good. Okay, awesome. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the actual particle system to get a nice little background effect of blocks flying by. So let's do that. Let's right click over here. Let's go to Effects, Particle System, and there we go. Awesome. So let's move this though all the way outside of the screen, which should be somewhere like right here. Awesome. Now let's go ahead and rotate its position real quick. Let's go ahead and make the X value 0, see what that does. Yep. And then the Y value, we're going to set that to 90, I think. Ooh, I guess it's -90, so -90. There we go. Awesome. You should get it facing the right way now. Awesome. All right, next thing we want to do, of course, is change how it's emitting. So let's go down a little bit. Let's go ahead to the shape. Let's change the angle, which is right here. I'm going to change that to, let's make it as wide as the screen, so about that big. And then also the radius, we want to make it the same thing, about the same. Looks like it actually stretches both, so what we want to do is lower the angle so it meets the same. Should be something like that. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect, just kind of in the same frame. Okay, awesome. Everything else looks pretty good though so far. What we could do next is simply scroll on down all the way, go to the renderer. We're going to change the actual image that's coming out of it. So to do that, we just set the materials to something else. I'm going to select that little circle on the right of the material, select a default block just like that. Awesome. Another thing we can do also is change the layer, which should be towards the bottom of this part, which is order in layer right over here. Let's make that something like -5, so it's always behind everything. Perfect. And if we go back to the top now, we should go ahead and get the color. And what I want to do is I want to make it pretty close to black, so somewhere about here, not all the way down, but a little close there. We can see how it looks better in game view. All right, let's make it a little lower. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag it a little lower. Something like that I think would look pretty good. You can adjust that as you want, but I think for the style of game we're making, it looks pretty good. Okay, awesome. Next thing, of course, I think they're kind of jumbled up together a little bit, so I kind of want to change how that looks. So let's go ahead and mess with the actual emission of it. So let's do the start speed, or I think it's the, not the duration, looping, pre-warm, start delay. Which one? Simulation speed? It might be that. Let's do a .5 and see what that changes. Nope, that's just going to make it overall slower, so we'll keep that at 1 because I like the speed. Oop, not 2, 1, there we go. Scroll down to the emission, it might be in the emission section. We have rate over time, which is 10. Let's change that to 7 and see how that looks. I think it looks a little better. I like that. Yep, they're not all jumbled up together, so they're coming out a little bit slower. Nice. We can go back to the game view and see how that looks. I think it looks pretty good for what we're making. So I might keep it just like that, okay? Awesome. Let's go back to scene. All right, we can select somewhere else. I think that looks pretty good so far. We have our ground, we have our player, we have our ground spawner, and also our particle system, okay? So far things are looking good. All right, so in this section, we're gonna go ahead and create the main menu UI. So we're gonna start off creating a main menu canvas, then we're gonna add a title text, high score text, and play game button. Let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So first thing we're gonna do, of course, is go ahead and create that canvas. So let's right click over here. Let's go to UI. Let's go ahead and go to canvas. There we go. Let's set a couple things for the canvas settings. So make sure you're selecting the canvas. Let's go ahead and change the render mode right here. We're gonna set that to screen space camera. That's just so we don't have to have this big rectangle here. We can actually see the canvas inside of our screen, which is pretty nice. So what we do have to do is drag and drop our camera. So let's grab the camera, drag and drop it into here, and there we go. Awesome. Next setting we're going to do is the UI scale mode. We're going to change it from the constant pixel size to scale with screen size. This just makes it a lot easier to scale with different screen sizes of computers, or even if we turn this into a mobile game, okay? That's why you want to do that. All right, next step though, let's go ahead and start creating the text. So let's right click on canvas. We're going to go ahead and go to UI again. We're going to go to text, text mesh pro. Let's go ahead and add that. It might ask you this little thing here where it asks you to download the essentials. You only need to do this one. You don't need to do the examples and extras if you don't want to. So I'm going to download those real quick. Let that load. Might take a second or two. Awesome. I'm going to close it out because I don't want the examples or extras. So I'm going to go ahead now and move my text up. All right. This is going to be the actual text for the title of the game. So let's go ahead and make a name for that. Let's do just title after the end of that, TMP Pro with the parentheses. All right, next up is I'm going to use the rect tool right here just to make it a little bigger. I like it because it will stretch out both the thing for the text and also the overall object itself. Okay, so once we have it about that size, I think that's pretty good, maybe a little bigger. We can go ahead and give it a name now. I'm going to call this just Endless Runner. Awesome. Let's go ahead and make it bold. I'm going to center it out with the alignment edits over here with this one here and also this one here. Perfect. I'm also going to change the color to match our block. I think it will look pretty good. So just one of the colors like that. Awesome. All right, I'm going to make this font a little bigger. Let's see how 120 looks. Might be too big. Yep, let's try just 100. Maybe a little bit less than that. Maybe 80. Still a little big. Let's try 60. Still a little big. Maybe I have to stretch it out a little bit more. Let's try that. Stretch it just a little bit. Let's go ahead and make this 80 again. Let's try that 60 again. Might need to stretch it out more. There we go, perfect. Then I'm going to go ahead and just center it. So I'm going to use the move tool now. Scroll up, and for the X position, I'm going to make that 0, and there we go. I might raise it up a little bit though, maybe a little bit just so we can see the text like that. Hit the game view, and there we go. Endless Runner. I like it. Looks pretty clean. I like it. Let's go back to scene now. Let's create the rest of the text ones now. So just so we don't have to reset all the text settings, I'm going to take that text there and just Control D on it. I'm going to change the title though. Instead of title, I'm going to change it to HS for high score. And simply, I'm just going to lower it down a little bit. I'm going to change the color. I'm going to change that color to white. So let's go ahead and select it. Go all the way up. Perfect. I'm going to make this much smaller. I'm going to do, let's try a 35. Might be too small. I think it looks pretty good. And simply change this to high score. Awesome. And let's see how that looks in game view. I like it. Go back to scene view. I might move it up a little bit. That's completely up to you though. All right, we're going to duplicate this one more time now and simply go to the top. Instead of just HS, we're just going to do HS lowercase score, just like that. Okay, awesome. And simply, I'm going to change the score to 0 for now. All right, I'm going to scroll this down and simply put it just like that. Go back to game, and there we go. Awesome. We might need to actually lower it a little bit more because I think the G will hit it if it gets a little longer, because the format we're going to do is going to have the minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. So there we go, just a little bit, just like that. And you can adjust that as you want. Maybe I'll go a little bit more just in case. All right, there we go. Perfect. All right, I like that. Awesome. So now let's go ahead and make the button, and then we should be good. All right, for the button, we're going to right click. We're going to go ahead to UI again. We're going to go to button, Text Mesh Pro. All right, now for our button, I'm going to go ahead and lower that down a little bit there. And simply what we're going to do is actually add a couple images to add a cool little background effect. So we're going to add a canvas, or we're going to go to canvas, right click, go down to UI, go to image. All right, scroll that down a little bit. And for the button, what I'm going to do is I want this to be the same color as our player also. So one of the blocks or the player, there you go. And I'm going to make this like the background of the button. So I'm simply going to go ahead and do image B. I'll just do image B so we know what it is. And I'm going to make it a little bit longer. Let's see what 2 is. It might be too big. We might do a little bit more. Let's try 3 then. 3 will be pretty good. Awesome. All right, I'm going to make the Y value though. Let's do a 0.7. Let's do a 0.8. I like 0.8 better. There we go. 0.8. Awesome. And we're going to add 2 of these now. So Control D. So everything is the same, except we're going to go ahead and shrink the Y value. So instead of 0.7, we could do maybe 0.6. And then for the X value, we want to increase that a little bit. So let's do 0.3. Let's see what 3.2 looks like. Might be a little big. Let's try 1. If it's too small, we can have 0.5. I think that actually look pretty good. Awesome. All right, so now that we have this nice little background, we need to put the actual button object in front of those two. Make sure it's still inside the canvas, but in front of it, okay? Then what I want to do is I actually want to take the color of the button and make it completely black, just like that. And take the rectangle tool and simply stretch it. Let's say, actually, instead of stretching it like that, we should just make it bigger with the scale. So what I'm going to do also is take the text out so we don't end up stretching the text. So I'm going to take this text out. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and make this. Let's make this 2. Maybe that might be too big. Yep. So we'll keep it at 1.5 maybe. Let's try 1.7, 0.8. 1.8 looks pretty good. All right. And then simply change this to 1. Let's see what 3 too small. Let's try 1.8. Maybe a little bigger. We'll change this to 2. Alright, let's lower the whole thing down to see if it looks any better. It doesn't look bad like that. Maybe a little bit bigger for the Y. We could do 2.2. Let's go ahead and go into the game view. And there we go. Awesome. I think I like that. Okay, doesn't look too bad. Let's go back to scene. Alright, if you don't want it to have curved corners like that, we could also just change the material. So we can go ahead and instead of the rounded corner one, we could just change it to the actual straight one, which I think is one of these somewhere. But honestly, I don't care. I think it looks pretty good like that. So I'm going to keep it like that. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead now and add the text back into it. There we go. We do, though, want to match the text to the blue. I think will look pretty cool. So let's add the blue color. There we go. Let's go ahead and make this bold as well. And let's go ahead and add the words play game. Play game, perfect. Let's adjust it. Let's go down to the text. I'm going to make this one the lower one, or maybe keep it as the middle and just readjust it in scene view. So let's go ahead and use the rectangle tool and simply lower it and higher it. Maybe, is it that good or that good? Let's see. That looks pretty centered to me. I don't think I like the size. Let's change that to 35. Too big. We might need to stretch it actually because it's a little small. Make sure you're still in the rectangle tool. Let's make it just go to the size of the button itself. There we go. Let's go back to game. And actually that looks really good. Awesome. Alright, perfect. That looks pretty good for our UI. I like it. Awesome. Let's go back to scene. Back up a little bit. Perfect. Alright, don't forget to save. So far so good. Alright, so in this section we're going to go ahead and create the scripts for our menu. We're going to start off creating one for the main menu itself. Then we're also going to create one for the ground motion, and then another one for the ground spawner. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start off with the main menu one itself, and we're actually going to be putting that script on top of our player. So let's go ahead and select our player right now. Now what we're going to do is we're going to scroll on down over here. We're going to go to add component, and we're going to go ahead and just call this one the main menu script. Okay, just like that. Let's go ahead and select the new script, create and add. Let that load. Might take a second for the first time for Visual Studio Code to open up. So let that load. You can see that little wheel on the bottom right loading. Alright. Once it loads though, then we'll go ahead and get started. Might have to double click it to open it up, or it will automatically open up. Let's let that load. Looks like it's almost done. Awesome. Once it is, you can go ahead and double click. Might take a second or two again. And there we go. Also, let me pull it over here once it finishes up. Alright, there we go. I'm going to put it into the bigger screen. Awesome. Alright, so this is going to be the main menu script. So let's go ahead and put in what we need for it. I'm going to copy what I have. And again, don't be shy to use the source code if you need to. No worries. So the first things we're going to add are going to be some top little libraries here. One is going to be the using TMP Pro. That's basically going to help us connect to our TMP Pro stuff like the UI for the text and also the UI for the button. Then we're also going to be using something called using Unity Engine.scene management, and that basically just helps us navigate through different scenes. Now we're currently in the main menu scene, but eventually we're going to add the game scene. So that's why we need this for the play game button. Okay, awesome. So make sure you have those two things here. All right, awesome. Next up, we're going to add a variable that we're going to be using. So I'm going to copy my variables. I like to put my variables above my void start, so I like to make a little space here. And it's going to be simply right here. We're only going to have one. It's going to be a public text mesh pro UGUI text time. All this is going to be doing is just representing where we're going to have the time itself on the screen. Okay, so we can basically see that high score. All right. So we're going to keep that there. Next thing we're going to add is going to be a simple code to actually play the game and turn the game on play mode, which I'm going to add in void start, because anything in void start is basically going to, of course, start when we start the game. All right. That's going to be a time.timescale equals 1. Now why are we setting this to 1? And what is this exactly? Time.timescale is basically something we can use in Unity to freeze all animations, all physics, all that stuff. And we're setting it to 1 because we want it in play mode, okay? If we set that to 0, that means we would pause the game. And when are we going to set it to 0? Well, when we're playing the game and we have game over active, okay? But for now, we're going to keep that at 1, okay? Awesome. So make sure you have that down. Perfect. Let me go ahead and add now what we have in the void update. That's going to be everything we have basically that happens over time and continuously happens. So let's go ahead and play this into void update. Awesome. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to set our actual high score text, okay? That's going to be this new variable we're creating called time to display, equaling it to this thing called player perfs. If you've ever used Unity before, player perfs is a simple saving process we can use in Unity to save floats, ints, and strings. You can only save about, I think it's like 22 megabytes, so not a lot of strings, but if you're only saving text, it shouldn't be that bad. All right. Now, how are we actually getting it? We're using that playerpers.getFloat, and then we're using this thing which is a key value of high score. So we could use something called setInt or setFloat, and then make sure to give this. You'll see that in later scripts, but for now, all you need to know is this is basically grabbing a saved value with a key value of high score. All right. What we're doing is we're just setting it to a variable named time to display. All right. Then we're doing a couple things here. This is basically going to do our calculations so we can get our high score text into those minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. Okay. That's why we have this whole calculation thing here. Now you don't need to understand this exactly if you don't want to. I just simply use this so we can calculate it into what we want. But what it's doing is first is going to calculate our current time. Then we're going to calculate the minutes, which is just dividing it by 60. Then we're going to grab the seconds, which is, of course, timesing it by 60. And then last but not least, we are getting the milliseconds, which is, of course, doing this calculation here of time display minus the time times 100. Okay, so all this is doing is basically getting us those minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. Once we have all these values here, then what we're going to do is insert them into our text or time text.text, okay? This value here, if you remember, this is our one right up here. That's going to represent our text that we're using, okay? Awesome. And then, of course, we need to specify that it's a text. That's why we're doing .text. And then we're equaling it to a $sign into quotes, which allows us to basically enter things inside of it, which is, of course, milliseconds, which is right here for the zeros, seconds, zeros, and then milliseconds, zeros, okay? Again, you don't need to understand this fully. All this is doing is basically displaying our current high score float into the current time we want, all right? Awesome. So make sure you have that down. Last but not least, we are also going to do GameObject.transform.rotate 0, 0, -40 times time.delta time. So all this is doing is actually turning our player. So when we're on the main menu scene, I just want our simple player to be rotating just like he would be in the game itself, okay? So that's all that's doing, is just rotating our player throughout the play game scene. And you'll see that happening once we get this done. All right, so make sure you have all that down. I'm going to save that there. Perfect. Next thing we're going to do is add the trigger. So this is going to do what we want it to, what the player wants to do when he touches new blocks. He's going to turn them into new colors. So let me paste that code right below. This is outside of the void update, but still inside of the Unity class itself, okay? So I'm going to paste this right up here. All right, so for our trigger, what we're going to be using is something in Unity, which is a public void on trigger enter 2D. Now this comes into play because we had a trigger box collider on a outside part of the box versus the inside part of the box, which was not triggered. That's why we needed that there, okay? So once our object is colliding and triggering into that spot that we have for that box, then it's going to check one thing. Of course, it wants to check and make sure that tag is equal to block, which is what we set for all those blocks. If it is equal to block and our player is hitting those blocks, then what we want to do is change the color, and that's what this collision, it's specifying that object that it has that block tag, get component sprite renderer dot color. So we're setting the color of whatever we run into of the game object get component sprite renderer color. So all this is doing is just equaling the object we're running into's color by our own color. Okay, awesome. So make sure you have all this down so we can touch the blocks and change their colors into what we want as our own color. Okay, awesome. And then last but not least, we need a simple function for clicking on the button to play the game, and that's going to be this right here. It's going to be a public void. We're calling it play game, and we're using that scene manager library that we downloaded, which is going to be scene manager.load scene and 1. Now, why are we making it 1? Well, because in Unity, our scene count always starts at 0. So our main menu 1 is going to be 0, and the next scene is going to be 1, and this game is only going to have 2 scenes, of course. The main menu scene, which is 0, and then also the game scene, which is going to equal to 1. So that's why we need that code there, okay? Awesome. So make sure you have all this down. Again, remember, you can copy the source code if you need to. No worries. I'm going to go ahead and minimize that. Let's let that load. It might take a second or two. Once it does, we can drag and drop in our high score text. So let's go ahead and select the player, and you should see a little area we can drag and drop in for the time text. So let's go ahead and find our text, which is that 0 there. Make sure it's the right one. I think it was the HS score one. So let's take that, drag and drop it right into there. Perfect. All right, so far so good. All right, next up we're going to do the ground script. So let's go ahead and add that. So we're going to go ahead and select our main ground, which is right here. And we're going to go ahead and go to add component. Let's go ahead and call this ground script, just like that. Let's go ahead, new script, create and add, let that load. Once it does, it might automatically open up Visual Studio Code, which mine does that a couple times while it's still loading. Go ahead, double click that script, and there you go. Awesome. All right, this is going to be a pretty small script. We're not going to add too much in here. We're simply going to add one variable right at the top and then a couple little code at the bottom. So I'm going to add that variable real quick. I'm going to add it right up here. I'm going to add one more space. I like it to be a little bit above. All right, so this is going to be a simple public float. And if you remember, a float is simply just like an int, except it can have a decimal place. And we're just going to call this speed because we're going to want to set the speed of the ground, okay? Awesome. So next up, we're going to add one more piece of code, which is the actual movement of the ground itself. So let me get that. That's going to be in our void update because remember, it's going to be continuously moving, so we need it in the update. All right, and how we're going to make it move is we're going to use a transform.position, which is the position of our current object, plus equals a vector3, which again is a simple x, y, and z value. We're going to use the .left function, which is just going to make it move left in the game, times the speed we set, times time.delta time, which is just basically the in-game time. So that's how we're continuously moving it throughout the game. Okay, awesome. Make sure you have all that down. Perfect. Once you do, let's go ahead and jump back in to the Unity editor. Let that load. We just want to make sure it loads with no errors. Awesome. And we can actually test that out. So let's go ahead and just hit play. And we should see the actual ground move to the left. Okay. Let's let that load. Looks like it's not moving. Oh, we didn't set the speed. That's why. So let's go ahead and select speed, or select the ground and then give it a speed. Let's do something like 3. We can adjust it later on, but for now I think it'll look good. Let's hit play again. And there you go. Awesome. So one thing, if you noticed, is it's not turning the actual color. So we need to make sure that's set. So let's go ahead and select the player. Make sure that script is attached. Yes, it is. We need to make sure all the blocks have that tag that we set. I think they should all have the tag, which again is block. Okay. They all have block. Now maybe our player is a little too high up, so we might need to lower him down a little bit. So let's take that player and simply lower it a little bit. Let's hit play again. We might need to add one more thing to the player, but let's make sure and see if this works. All right. You know what we need to add probably is a box or a rigid body. The rigid body gives it physics, so it's not calculating the actual movement. So to do that, simply we have our player here. Scroll down, go to add component, rigid body 2D because it's a 2D game. And what we want to do is set the gravity scale to 0 and the constraints, because we don't want our player to actually move. This is kind of just a standalone. We're going to freeze the X position, and we can also freeze the Y position. Okay, so let's go ahead, hit play, and see if that works now. I think it should work. And there you go. Awesome. Now, looks like he's a little too low. That's why it's getting a little jumbled. So we can go ahead and actually raise up a little bit. Maybe a little bit more. Something like that should be good. Let's hit play and see how that looks. And there we go. Awesome. I like it. Perfect. And we can adjust the speed of the platform later, but for now I like it. All right, let's do the other script now. So far so good. All right, final script is going to be the ground spawner. So let's go ahead and create that script. Let's select our actual game object for the ground spawner, which is right here. What we're going to do is add component. We're going to go ahead and call this just ground spawner script. There we go. New, create and add. Let that load. Awesome. Once it loads up, oh, it didn't load up yet, minimize that, let that load. All right, once it does, just double click it, and there we go. Awesome. All right, so we're gonna add a couple things in here. It's gonna be a little bigger of a script, but not too big. We're gonna start off with some variables. So again, we're gonna put them right above our void start. I'm gonna paste them in right here. All right, so our first variable is a public float, and that is a max time. So basically we're going to set the max time that we want before we spawn a new object. I'm going to currently set that to 1, but we can change it later on. We also can go ahead and do a private float, and we're going to call that timer, which at first it's going to equal 0, okay, because we want it to instantly spawn a new platform right when the game starts, but then spawn more over time. All right. Next up is a public game object, and these little brackets here are making it into an array. Okay. Now, why do we want it as an array? Because once we get into the game, we want to have multiple ground spawnings. Okay, so different varieties of ground, maybe with different spikes on it, so it makes it harder for the player, so he's not doing the same thing over and over again. Okay, and we're just giving that a name of ground. All right, awesome. All right, once you have that all down, let's go ahead and start off in the void start, because remember we're going to have spawn one right in the void start, and that's going to be from right here. So we have a game object, calling it new ground, and we're going to equal that to a function or a code that we can use in Unity called initiate. Initiate just helps us basically create a new object in the game. Now we have to pass in a couple things. The first thing, of course, is what we're creating, and that is going to be the ground. All right, we know we're just creating the ground, but we of course want to do a random ground. So we have the entire ground here, but then we have another array, and we're passing in Unity engine dot random dot range of starting off as 0 to the ground dot length. Okay, so we're using Unity Engine's functionality and a dot random, which helps us get a random value, but we also need to give that random value a dot range of whatever we set it to, and we know we have starting off at 0, and then we're going to the length of whatever amount we have in here. So if we have something like 5 different ground types, then it's going to get those 5 different ground types and choose in between those different 5 ones. Okay, that's why we need that dot length for it. All right, awesome. So make sure you have that down there. Okay, once you do though, then where are we going to actually initiate it from? And that's going to be what this is down here. We're using the new ground object that we have, .transform.position, equaling the transform.position of our object with this script, because if you remember, we put it on that same y value plus new vector 3 of 0, 0, 0. So this is going to spawn that new ground exactly where the current object is with this script on it. All right. Perfect. So make sure you have that down so we can initiate it. And now we just need to add this same thing with a timer. That's going to be in the void update. So let me go ahead and grab that real quick. Once I got that, I'll explain it. Remember, you can always get this from the source code as well. All right. So in the void update, we have the creating the ground over time. Now, how are we calculating that? We're simply doing an if statement of timer. So we're saying if the timer is greater than the max time set, then we're going to go ahead and do everything we just did right over here. So we're just recreating that entire new ground. The only thing we're changing is these 2 things here. The first one is a destroy new ground, which is the ground we made after 18 seconds. All right. Now, why are we doing this? Well, we don't want to have an infinite amount of objects in our game. It might lag the game or crash it if we create too many objects. Okay. So we need to destroy the object after some time. All right. We could also put this up here, but for now, I just want to keep it here. Okay. Other than that, we also want to set the timer back to 0, okay? Now this down here is actually making the timer go up over time. It's using a timer plus equals time.delta time, which is just the real time. So it's just basically making that timer go up in real time, all right? Awesome. So make sure you have all that down there. You could have just copied these 2 lines again from right here. It's the same thing. So make sure you do that. Awesome. All right, once you got that, let's go ahead and minimize this. Let that load, might take a second or 2. Once it does, then we can drag and drop our ground into it. All right, let's see. Select the actual ground spawner, and there you go. All right, now what we want to do though is reorganize a couple things. We have all our scripts right here. Let's actually put them into our scripts folder. So I'm going to drag that over there. It might open this up. Sometimes it does that. You might need to reopen up your scripts. It might give you this little error here. So go ahead and just close that out. Minimize. Let's drag and drop that into scripts. It's going to do the same thing. I'm going to close that out. Minimize. Give it a second, drag and drop that into there, minimize again, or we could just close out the whole thing, minimize, let that load, and simply double click the script and it should just pop up just like it was a second ago. All right, I'm going to minimize that. Let that load. All right, next thing we need to do is create the prefab so we can actually recreate the ground. So I'm going to go back to the main assets folder here. Let's go back and select the ground spawner. Now we're going to select actually the ground itself. So let's create this into a prefab. To do that, pretty easy. All we got to do is just drag and drop it into the prefab folder. So I'm going to take the ground and drag and drop it into prefabs. There we go. Now one thing you should always do with prefabs is make sure that the Z value is set to 0, because sometimes it'll give a random one, or if you create a empty game object, it might give it a random value as well. So let's select the one here as well, make sure that Z value is set to 0. We can also make sure as well for our ground spawner, make sure that Z value is set to 0 as well. Alright, because in 2D games we really shouldn't be messing with the Z value of the position, because that's going to be more of like an in and out kind of style. Alright, so now that we have the ground prefab, let's select ground spawner and simply drag and drop your ground into here. Let's create a new list item, drag and drop that, perfect. And I think max time of 1 second is going to be a little too fast, so I'm going to actually set that to 4 or maybe 2 for now. Let's set it to 2. We can always adjust that later, because it's going to respawn every 2 seconds. Alright, that might be still too fast, but we'll see what it does. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to hit the play button. We might need to adjust the actual ground and the spawning of it, so we go ahead. We have one here. Looks like we need to make it a little closer. Looks like it's still making it too fast, I think. And also we forgot to change the blue color back, so let's do that as well. Let's select the main ground here. We can double click in it so we can actually edit inside of it. And what I'm going to do is simply just highlight them all just like that. Go to the color coder. Make sure it's the same as the other ones, just like that. Oops, looks like I clicked the background, not the actual color. There we go, perfect. Alright, let's go back. It should autosave if it's set right there. Let's go back over here. And let's go ahead and select the ground spawner again. And I still think 2 seconds was too fast. Let's do 4 seconds. Let's go ahead and hit play. We might need to make the ground speed faster too. We'll have to experiment with it. Alright, we can view it from this here. Looks like it's still going a little fast, but it's not that bad. It might be overlapping a little bit, but I think it's okay. So let's hit game view. I like it. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty smooth. If I remember though, I think the starting one was a little too far away. So what we could do is either move the one here a little closer, or we can move the spawner one. So I'm going to move that just a little bit. Let's hit play again and see how that looks. Let that load. There we go. I like it. Awesome. I think what's going on though is the other one over there was overlapping a little bit. Let's let that load. I kind of like it though. It looks pretty good overall. Awesome. Let's hit play there. One way to fix that, I think what we could do is just change the layering of it. So we could go ahead and just select the current ground we have, not the one in here, but the one over here. We could go ahead and, oh, you know what? I think we actually changed the blue here by accident. Let's go ahead and move this down so I can change that real quick. So if you remember this one here, we want to change, I think it's these couple. So I think it's just these. Let's change that to that color. I don't want to select all this stuff. Oops. Let's see if I can just grab what I want. Nope, not going to let me. Alright, we'll just do them individually. Let's change that to that. Change that to that. Change that to that. It's a little tedious, but I think it'll look good by the end of it. Let's go there. And let's go there. Almost done. It's because we have so many things on the screen, I think. Alright, let's keep going. And almost done. One more, or two more actually. I think the other one's showing a little bit on the corner part. Yep. Alright, perfect. There we go. Now I think, let's make sure that's not the same color. Alright, it's not. Good. Alright, I like that. Now one more thing we could do is simply just select all of these. So hold down the shift key, select the bottom one, and just make this layer just one more higher. So I'm going to make it like 1. And I think it should look good now. Let's hit play. Make sure that one's above the other ones. And yep, there we go. I like it. Awesome. We could make this go faster, but I think for our current game it looks pretty good. We could also just slow down the actual square itself if we wanted to. Like it. Nice. Let's go ahead and slow down the block and see how that looks. Let's go to the block script, which is somewhere around here. I guess we never set a public variable, so we can just go into it and change it, which I think was this little turny thing here. So instead of 400, we could do 300. See how that looks. Control save, minimize, and I think we should be good with this. Let's see how it looks. And then we should be good with the main menu section. There we go. I like that. That looks a little bit more nice. Awesome. All right, one more thing to do though before we save and end the main menu part is we need to set the button functionality. So go ahead and open up your canvas and find the button, which is right here. Scroll on down to the on click. We need to add the actual script with the button, which if you remember, that's on the player. So let's drag and drop the player into here. Go to this one here, find the script, and do the play game. Awesome. All right, perfect. So far so good. Don't forget to save. All right, so in this section, we're going to create the game scene. We're going to start off by creating the scene itself. Then we're going to make sure it has the score UI and also a game over UI. Let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So what we're going to do is we're just going to duplicate the current scene and use this one. But before we do, let's go ahead into the scenes folder. This is going to have the sample scene, the one we've been working on. Now what I want to do is rename this one to main menu. So let's go up to the top left to file and make sure we save. It's always important to save the actual scene and also the project before you edit anything with the scenes in case you accidentally delete something. So let's go ahead and right click on it. Let's go to rename, and I'm just going to call this main menu, just like that. Go ahead, hit enter. There we go. So now we have the main menu scene. I'm going to go ahead and save it one more time just before we duplicate it. I'm going to go ahead, save project. Now I'm going to select it this time, Control D, and there we go. Now we got main menu 1. All right, so let's go into main menu 1, double click it. There we go. Let's rename this one also, right click, go up to rename. We're just going to call this game scene. Awesome, perfect. So now we are in game scene. All right, and we want to set a couple things. So we want the actual score, so we can keep the score text itself, but not the actual title or the title of the name itself. So let's go ahead and open up the current canvas we have, and we're simply going to remove the title of the game because we don't need that anymore. We also don't need the title of the score. We just want to move that score a little bit towards the top, so somewhere about there. Let's see how that looks. I think that'll look pretty good. Awesome. All right, next up is we're going to go ahead and use the button for our game over. So what we're going to do actually is create a panel specifically for all of our game over items. So let's right click on the canvas. Let's go ahead, go to UI. Let's go ahead and find the panel itself. Now it's going to be a little grayed out, so let's go ahead and make it completely invisible. So I'm going to go ahead, select color. I'm going to make the A value go all the way down. Perfect, just like that. Awesome, and we can rename it. So we have panel. I'm going to call this game over. There we go. Awesome. Inside the panel game over, all I want to add is a couple things. I want to simply drag and drop our button, but remember our button is combined with a couple different things, so we actually want to control select on the button, control on the image B1 and also the regular image B. Drag and drop that into the game over panel, and there we go. So now what we can do is, of course, if we turn off our panel, it would also turn off all the items inside of it just like that. Let's keep it on though. So for the button itself, we're going to go ahead and make 2 of these. So I'm going to go ahead and control and select all of them just like that. I'm going to move that over to the right. So let's go ahead and just move everything over somewhere like that for now. Okay. Maybe we could make this a little bit smaller. So we'll do that in a bit, but I think for now we'll keep it the same. I might actually go ahead and actually put them on the top. Well, if we have buttons for game over there, yeah, we'll keep it on the bottom. That's fine. You can adjust how you want it to look. That's completely up to you. But I'm going to keep it like this. So I'm going to go ahead, Control D. So now we have another set also. I'm going to have one over here as well. Pretty much the same length. So now we have a button right here. This one here, I'm going to make this one for main menu. So I'm going to change the text for it. Scroll to text. Let's just say main menu. Awesome. We're also going to do the other one. Let's go ahead and open it up. This one's going to be play again. So we can go ahead and do play again. Just like that. Awesome. And just so we know which button it is, I'm going to go ahead and just change the name for the play again one. And we'll do play again. Awesome. And then for this one here, I'll just change that to button main menu. All right, main menu. Awesome. Now next thing we need is the actual game over text. We could have used the title, but it's okay since we got rid of it. I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate the high score text. So I'm going to go ahead, duplicate that, drag and drop it into the game over panel. I'm going to rename it. I'm going to call it game over title. Awesome. And I'm going to move that down. We still want to be able to see the screen, so I'm going to do something like that. and then simply go ahead, type in game over. I'm going to make a frowny face also. There we go, I like that. Let's go ahead and make it all red though this time. All right, and we can go ahead and increase the size. I'm going to make this, let's see how 50 looks. Pretty good. We go a little bigger, I think. Let's do 65. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and raise it up a little bit. Make sure it's not too close though to the numbers up there. So I think like that. Awesome. So when our game over happens, I'm going to have all this appear. So if we simply turn it off for now, it's not going to be there, but if we turn it on, that's going to be our game over screen. Okay. Awesome. Remember, you can adjust this as you want. You can make the buttons smaller, you can make them bigger, you can move them on the top. That's completely up to you. As long as you have something with 2 buttons for play again, main menu, and also the title, you should be set. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead, disable that. I'm going to go back to scene. Awesome. Don't forget to save. All right, so in this section, we're going to go ahead and create the player. We're going to start off by creating the player object itself, and then we're going to go ahead and add some colliders and physics to the player. Let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to remove the current player we have in here and create a new one. So I'm going to select that one there. I'm going to go ahead and delete that one. All right, now we're going to go ahead and create a new game object. So let's go ahead and right click. We're going to go ahead, go to create empty. We're going to recall this one, player again. So capital P, player. All right, inside of here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to give it a couple things. Starting off, we are going to give it a rigid body 2D. There we go. We're also going to go ahead and we're going to give it a, not a box collider this time, we're going to do a circle collider. So we're going to find that circle collider. There we go, circle collider 2D, awesome. All right, so now that we have those things set, one thing we do need to set is we are going to set a constraint for the rigid body 2D. We're going to constrain it on the X value, okay? Just so we can't go side to side because we're going to have the ground moving towards us. All right, now we're going to go ahead and actually add the box to it and then also another point for where the camera wants to track it. So I'm going to go ahead and put this where I want it in the game. I'm going to put it a little bit more to the left. So let's put it somewhere about here, and we can fall down a little bit. We don't need to just instantly start. Or actually, because we're going to have the blues like that, we might want to do like that. Okay, awesome. All right, let's go ahead and add a block to it. So we're going to use our little block here again. So let's click on our square, duplicate it, drag and drop it into here. Awesome. I'm going to change the name of this. I'm going to call it body player. Awesome. All right, I'm going to make the 0 for the X and the Y, so it's exactly on that circle collider. So I'm going to put a 0 there for X, 0 for Y. Awesome. Now make sure that the actual circle collider is around it just like that. As you can tell, that's what we want. Okay, awesome. All right, next up is we need the actual point. So let's go ahead and right click. Let's go to create empty. We can call this cam point. All right, awesome. And the cam point, I want to do it a little bit in the middle. We can adjust it later on, but just a little bit forward of it. So somewhere about there I think would be pretty good. Awesome, so make sure it's there for that. Next thing we need to do is actually make the color of our player the same blue. So let's go ahead, make the box color that blue color, and there we go. Awesome. All right, things are looking pretty good. If we got everything for the rigid body 2D, the circle collider, we got the body player, and we also got the cam point. All right, awesome. So far so good. Don't forget to save. All right, so in this section, we're going to go ahead and create the player script. We're going to start off by creating the script itself. Then we're also going to go ahead and add some code for the functionality. Let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to be creating the script for the player. So let's go ahead, select our main player object right here. We're going to go ahead and add component. We're going to go ahead and just call this player script. Let's go ahead, new script, create and add. Let that load. It might open up again. Let's make sure it loads though. Once it does, then we can double click it. And before we double click it, you know what we could do is we could simply drag and drop it into our scripts folder and then open it up. Once we get it, it's going to do that again. Let it load. And there we go. Let's double click it. Awesome. All right, now we're in our player script. So we're going to be adding a couple things. We are going to be adding some usings at the top just because we're going to also kind of combine this with the overall game controller. So for the buttons, game over scenes, all that stuff is going to be in this as well. So we're going to need a using TMP Pro so we can interact with the buttons and the text. We're also going to be using Unity Engine.scene management. So when we want to leave the game scene, go back to main menu, or when we want to restart the game, we're going to need that. Okay, awesome. Now there's quite a few variables, so let me get those down. This is going to be our biggest script yet probably, but after this everything else is pretty simple. So alright, we have a couple variables here. Starting off, we have a public float for velocity. That's going to be our velocity that makes our player jump up and down. Then we're also going to need to tell it what rigid body we're going to be using. That's going to be this private rigid body 2D, and then we're calling it RB for rigid body. We're also going to have a public game object. That's going to be the player body, because if you remember, we're going to be changing things for the player body, not necessarily the actual player object itself, okay? That's why we need that. We're also going to have public bool spinning. So basically when we're spinning is going to be kind of like when we're on the ground. That's what I'm going to call it. So when you're on the ground, that's just going to be spinning is true, and when you're off the ground, spinning is going to be false, okay? Awesome. Next up is for the power-ups. We're going to have public bool double jump active, because remember, if we are not active, then we don't want to be able to have the double jump. Next thing is the double jump used, because we only want 2 double jumps. You can add more if you want to, but I think 2 looks pretty good for the game. And then of course we need a double jump timer, because we don't want to be able to use double jump forever. We're just going to be using it when we have the power up, okay? Awesome. Next up is the public game object boom, and this is going to be a particle system that we're going to have. So basically if we die as the regular color, which is teal, cyan, same thing, then we're going to have that particle explode. And if we have the green one for the double jump, then we're going to have that one explode, and then also the infinity one. If we end up dropping to the floor, then we're going to have that one work as well, okay? So that's why we need 3 different particle system game objects, all right? Next up, we're going to have a public bool. This is going to be the gold power. This is the one that makes you invincible. Then we also need the timer for it as well. Then, of course, we need a public bool to tell when the game is over or not. That's going to be right here. And then we also need a Text Mesh Pro UGUI for the time text. So basically when we are going to be showing the distance time on the top. And we need an actual float to represent the integer of that. And last but not least, we have the game object for the game over screen. Okay, awesome. So I know that was a lot. Remember, you can copy and paste this from the source code if you need to, but make sure you have all this down. Okay, awesome. Once you do, we're going to move on. We're going to move on to the void start, and we're going to have a couple things in there. So let me grab that real quick. In the void start, we're going to have 3 little lines. Starting off with our rigid body, we need to tell it exactly where that rigid body is coming from. So we're equaling our private rigid body to the get component rigid body 2D, which is just going to grab that rigid body in our specific item or a specific player. So we're grabbing that rigid body. Then we also have the player body dot get component sprite render dot color equals color cyan. So our starting color every time we play the game is going to be cyan, which is that teal color we have right now. So make sure you have that there. Then last but not least is, of course, we want to set the game in play mode, which is, of course, that time.timescale equaling 1, just like how we did for the main menu. Okay, awesome. So make sure you have all that down for the void start. Then we're going to have quite a few things for the void update. Let me get all that down real quick. It's going to be quite a few. Should be good with just this. All right. So in the void update, there's going to be a couple things. Let me paste them in, and then we'll go over them. All right. So we have a couple things. Starting off, we have a starting if statement that's going to surround almost everything. It's going to go all the way down to here to this else statement. But inside of it, we're just going to simply do a game over if it equals false. So if it's not in game over, then we can have all these different abilities for our game. Okay? All right. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to have timer plus equals time dot delta time. Okay? And then we're going to use a function that we're going to call it, which is going to be display time, which is going to be timer. So timer plus equals time to delta time. That's just going to start up our current time that we have for the game. Okay, awesome. So make sure you have that there. All right. Next up is we're going to have our ability to actually jump, which is going to be the jumping of the player. And this is going to be quite a few different things because we don't want just one type of jump. We're going to have 2. That's why we're having this if-else statement. So if that double jump bool is equal to true, and if we can put true without equaling it to true in C#, so we could just put double jump active. We could do the same way here if you want to. You could just equal it to true as well, and it does the same thing. But just to keep my code smaller, I'm just going to keep it as like that. Okay, awesome. So if double jump is active and equals true, then we can go ahead and use this thing here. We have if get mouse button down 0, so any left click on the screen, and spin equals true. So if we're on the ground, if you remember spinning, I want to be spinning if I'm on the ground, then we're going to have a true. So we can do everything we want inside of this if statement if these both are true, okay? If these both happen, basically. All right. We also have another one, which is the or. Okay. Now this is for the double jump effect. We are going to do if we select the screen and double jump used equals 1. Okay. So if double jump equals 0, and we haven't used it yet, then we're not going to be able to double jump. We want it to equal 1. Okay. But if it equals 2, then we're still not going to be able to use it. Okay. So that's what we have this here. Okay. Inside of it is the actual jumping of our player, and we're going to use rigid body dot velocity. This is just going to be basically the ability to move our rigid body, and we're going to equal that to something called a vector 2, which is simply a x and y value, and we're using the dot up function for it. So we can basically just go up, which is going to increase our y value. Okay. And of course we want to tell it how much do we want to do it by, which is going to equal that velocity variable we have. Okay. Awesome. So make sure you have that there. Perfect. Then of course we need to add one for our double jump used, okay? Because our double jump is at 0 at the beginning, and then we're gonna of course add one to our double jump. All right, awesome. Make sure you have that there. Perfect. Next up is our else. So let's say double jump is not active. Then we're gonna have a regular jump. Then we're gonna have another if statement said if the click is down and spin equals true, okay? So if double jump is false, but we're on the ground and we click, then we're going to still be able to jump. And we're going to do that same thing, rigid body dot velocity equal vector 2 dot up times velocity. So same movement, but of course we're not going to be adding a point to our double jump. All right, awesome. Make sure you have all that down for our jumping. Okay, once you do, let's go ahead and do the next one. This is going to be the actual rotation of our block. So this is going to be how our block rotates. We could just do rotating block for this, just so you know exactly what it's all using for. Oops. There we go. Rotating block. Hold on. There we go. Rotating block. Now what we're going to do for our rotating block, if spinning equals false, all right, so if spinning is not false, like we're not on the ground spinning, then we're going to do player body dot transform rotate 0, 0, negative 700 times time dot delta time. Okay, so if we're not on the ground, we're going to increase the spinning, all right, just so it gives it a little bit of a force effect. You're going to see it basically do its regular spinning motion when it's on the ground, but when we click, or we're in the air basically, then we're going to go ahead and make it a little faster, just so it looks a little bit more realistic, all right? That's why we need this here. Now, of course, if spinning equals false, then we're going to set it back to our regular spinning, which is negative 350 times time dot delta time. Similar to how we did it in the main menu screen, we're just going to add a different style of spinning every time it jumps in the air, okay? Awesome. And then last but not least, we're going to have this other one here. We're going to have an else statement, so if the game is over, if you remember this is coming from here, then we're going to go ahead and set game over screen dot set active true. So our game over screen is always set false unless we're in the game over bool of true, which will make this whole game over screen appear, all right? Awesome. I know that was a lot, but make sure you have it all down. All right. Once you do, we're going to move on. So we're going to go ahead and do the next one here. Let me go ahead and copy what I need. Looks like, I think we're missing one thing for display time, but I think we're going to add that in a little bit, so no worries. Let's make sure, yeah. All right, so let me add the next one, which is going to be for triggers. All right, this one's a little big as well, just because we have a lot of different objects we're going to be interacting in the game with. So let me grab all that. That's going to be outside of the void update, but still inside the main class. So I'm going to go ahead and add it right here. All right, so starting off, we are going to have a public void on trigger enter 2D, collider 2D collision. So what this is just a function in Unity where we can basically tell whether or not we're entering certain triggers throughout the game, okay? So if a trigger happens in our 2D game, we're going to look and see what tag it is. That's what all these if statements are for. Every single one of these if statements is looking for a specific tag or another bool that we have with it, okay? So the first one here is if collision.gameObject.compareTag equals block. So if we hit something with a block tag, then and it's also game over equals false, then we're going to have something happen. We're going to have that collision.getComponent sprite render dot color equals player body dot get component sprite render color. So basically all this here is doing is simply just making that block that we are interacting with turning into our color of our current player body block, which is making that teal color, okay? All right, so that's what that's doing there. Next up is for the ground one itself. So if we're running into the actual ground tag, then we are going to set that spinning equal that to true, double jumps used equal that to 0, okay? Because our double jumps are always going to reset when we hit the ground, all right? So if we hit the ground, then we're going to set our double jumps to 0, okay? And we're also going to hit it, or spinning to true as well. All right, you'll see that happen in just a bit. We're going to be making the actual ground map, so make sure you have that down, okay? Next up here is going to be for the double jump power up, which is going to be everything in this if statement. We're going to have the if collision dot game object compared tag equals double jump power up. So if we go inside of a double jump power up, then we're going to want a couple things happen. We're going to start off, we're going to want a player body dot get component and dot color equals color green. So if we get this power up, then we want to turn our player body into the green color, okay? Awesome. So the next thing we're going to do also is we're going to do double jump active. We're going to set that to true now, because of course we know that if we run into the double jump power up, we want to be able to use it. So we got to set that to true. Next up, gold power false. So if we get a new power up, how I have it set up is basically we're going to turn off the other power up. So vice versa, if we get the gold power up, we're going to turn off the double jump one. Okay, that's why I have this false here for that. Next up is we're going to start the quarantine process of power green, and we're going to make that in just a bit. That's going to be the actual time that we have the power up, because once the time runs out for it, then we're going to simply turn off the power up, okay? So you'll see that in just a bit, but that's going to start a new function, all right? Last but not least, we're going to destroy that power up object. So once we run into it and collect it, we're going to make it disappear, okay? Awesome. And pretty much the same thing here for the gold one. We're going to have, of course, looking at the right tag, gold power up. If we run into something with the tag of gold power up, then we're going to go ahead and, of course, set our player body color to yellow, which is going to be the color of the power up. You can make that color whatever you want, but I'm making it yellow. Then we're going to set the gold power to true this time and set the double jump active to false this time. And then, of course, we're going to start quarantine of power gold, which we'll see in just a bit. And, of course, destroy the power up object, okay? So these both are for power ups. So we could go ahead and type in power ups for here so you know what these are. Power ups, all right? Perfect. So make sure you have both the power up if statements filled out right here. Remember, you can always copy and paste from the source code. All right, once you have that, then we have another thing. This is going to be for the actual enemies, basically, these spikes, okay? So this here part below is going to be for enemies. All right, whoopsie. You need double slash for comments. There we go. This is going to be for the enemies, which are going to be the spikes that we're going to have, which our player is going to be avoiding. So we're going to start off here with a if collision.gameObject compared tag, looking for that spike tag, and gold power equals false. Because remember, if our gold power is equal to true, then we don't want to be affected by the spikes, okay? So if this was true, it wouldn't happen. Now we also have an or condition as well, and that here is going to be the out of bounds. So if we go out of bounds and we have the gold power true, we're still going to get a game over, okay? Because out of bounds doesn't really care about if we have power-ups, and that's going to be the floor. So if we basically jump through the cracks or we fall into the bottom part, then we're going to have a game over. So you'll see us set that eventually as well. So make sure you have that whole thing down. All right, once you do, then we actually have to have what happens. So if double jump is active, true, then we're going to initiate that particle system. That's going to be what this whole line is doing. So we're using initiate, boom green, transform.position, which is just the position of the object itself. And then we're using this quantum Euler, new vector 3. All this is doing is setting a specific rotation. So like if we wanted to spin the rotation of our game over object, or we wanted to make it rotated a little differently, or the position somewhere else, then we could use this stuff here to set that. But because we don't really care, I'm simply just setting it all to 0. So 0x, 0y, and 0z, okay? That's why I'm doing that there. And of course, then again, we're gonna go set game over and equal that to true, all right? Awesome. So make sure you have all that down. That's gonna be for the double jump active true when we run into something. Then we have an else if for the same thing basically, except this one's going to be for the gold power up. So if our gold power up is true this time, we're going to make the boom gold. Same thing for the rest of it, transform.position, and then that new vector 3, 0, 0, 0. All right, awesome. And of course, game over also. Now, last but not least, if we just don't have any of these active, then we're going to go to this else statement. We're going to have that game over equals false, and then initiate the boom cyan, which is going to be our default color of our player, okay? That's what this whole initiate is doing as well. And of course, we're going to set that game over to true as well. All right. Last but not least, we're going to do the start quarantine for set game over, and that's going to actually set the scene. And also, we're going to make the player body itself turn off. So after a little bit of time, we're going to turn off the player body. Okay. So you've got all that down. I know that was a lot. Remember, you can always copy and paste from the source code if you need to. All right. Make sure you have that down. I'm going to save that currently. All right. Let's go ahead and do the next part. This is going to be for the exiting the trigger, so let's go ahead and grab that real quick. let me get that. It's going to be outside of this, but still inside the main class. So we can do it like right about here. All right. So we can go ahead and do a public void. Oh, actually, you know what? I think I pasted it in the wrong area. Yep, I was a little more to the right. So I'm going to Control Z to get that back. All right. And it's going to go actually right here. All right. Make sure it's in the right area or you're going to get that error. All right, so when we're no longer on the ground, we're going to have an on-trigger exit 2D. So this one up here was for entering 2D, if you see, on enter 2D. So now we have another one for exiting the 2D, okay? So when we exit the 2D, specifically the ground tag, which is right here, so if we exit the ground tag, then we're going to set that spinning to false, which is basically that you're not on the ground anymore, okay? We're going to set that to false. So when you go on it, it's set to true, and when you leave it, we're setting it to false, okay? Awesome. So make sure you have that down. Now this one's a little different. Make sure you have that on trigger exit 2D and also the collider 2D. Okay. Make sure you have all that. Perfect. Next up, we're going to have also the triggers. So let me go ahead and copy those real quick as well. It's going to be a couple of them because we have one for each color and all that. Let me paste these guys down here. All right. So starting off, we have the player color changing. This one's going to be for the power gold. Okay. So once that power gold happens, and this is connecting to this one up here, this start quarantine power gold right here. So once we get this started, then we're going to affect everything in here. So we're going to start off with a yield return new wait for seconds, and that's going to basically mean we're not going to run anything below this until these 15 seconds happen. Okay, once these 15 seconds happen, then we can initiate everything below it. Okay, and it's only going to run once. All right, which is nice because that's what we want. So the first thing that's going to happen, of course, is we're going to change our color back to normal, which is the color cyan of that. We've used this before, the player body get component, sprite render, empty parentheses, color equals color cyan. We're also going to go ahead and turn that gold power off right there. So we're turning that off. And then last but not least, we're going to use this get component circle collider 2D enabled, false, and true. So why are we doing this? Well, I noticed that when you're inside of a spike, and you run out of time, we still want to be able to die from that. So how to fix that issue is we simply turn on and off very quickly our our circle collider, okay? That's what this is doing. So you kind of need this if you're going to have that kind of effect. And I found this is the best way to do it. All right, awesome. So make sure you have that all down there. This is for the gold power up. Now we have the green one. This one here is going to be very similar. We're going to wait 15 seconds. And then once those 15 seconds happen, then we're going to go ahead, do a player body get component, sprite renderer, of course, back to the cyan color. And then we're also going to go ahead and set the double jump active to false. Now, why are we not adding this here? Well, it's because, remember, this isn't really affecting us, our ability to get hurt, because we can always still get hurt even if we run into something with the green power up, okay? That's why we don't need this part here exactly, all right? Awesome. So make sure you have that down, all right? Make sure you have everything for that so you can use the green power up. And then last but not least, we have the set game over, okay? So this is going to be setting the game over. And all I'm going to be doing here basically is waiting 1 second so we can see that animation of the enemy, or not the enemy, of the player exploding with the particles. And then I'm going to turn the game on pause, okay? So we're going to basically have a second to view that animation, and then the game will go on pause. All right, if you want to see longer of the animation, you can simply set that to other things. But I think it looks pretty good with 1 second, all right? Awesome, so make sure you have that down, perfect. All right, let's go ahead and do the final two parts. Let me grab those two. We're gonna have one for the display time and also a couple for the buttons that we are creating. So I'm gonna paste this right below this. All right, I'm gonna paste that there. All right, so the first one is gonna be the display time, private void display time, and we're gonna be passing in a float time display. All right, and then we're going to have a couple of statements in here. This is basically going to be setting our high score. So this thing here, this display time, if you remember, it's going to be a little bit above. I think it's all the way on the top actually, if our game is not in game over. I think it is, yep, right here. So our display time, and we're passing in the timer value. So our timer value is just going to equal the in-game time, which is like this. So it's basically going to constantly update throughout the game as long as our game over is not equaling true, okay? Awesome, so now that we have that timer float value, then we're going to be using it in this down here. We're going to be passing it in as a float. Anytime you're calculating time, you always have to use a float because it's going to have decimal places in it. But before we calculate it, then we're going to have this simple if statement. Now this if statement is going to calculate whether or not it's our high score or not, okay? So we're going to start off saying if our high score is less than the time display that we're passing in, then we can go ahead and set that high score down here, okay? That's that playerperfs.set float, high score, time display. This one here is a get float, okay? So we're getting that key value, and then we're going to go ahead and set a value for that key value, okay? So first we're checking and verifying that our high score. Then we're going to go ahead and do that same calculation we did in the main menu script. All this is doing again is simply going to make it show the minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. That's what the entire calculation is doing. Minutes, then it's for seconds, then it's for milliseconds, okay? Awesome. Make sure you have all that down. You can even copy it from the main menu one and paste it. Same thing here. This is going to be for the output of that, which is the time, capital text, dot text. And then again, we're passing in those values with this complete string set, okay? Awesome. So make sure you have that down. Perfect. Once you do, then we can get the last two functions. This is simply going to be for the buttons. So we have buttons for the public void play again, and then we have this scene management dot load scene. So this is going to basically reload the game scene, which is of course going to be number 1 because it's our second scene. And then if you want to go back to main menu, we can use the main menu B, which is going to load that scene of 0, which is our main menu scene. Awesome. So again, I know this was a lot. Remember, you can always copy and paste from the source code if you need to. No worries. I'm going to save what I got here. Make sure you save it. You shouldn't have any errors if you copied it. Awesome. Let's go ahead and go back to the game. Let that load. Make sure there's no errors. Might take a second because it was a pretty big script. All right, once it's done and you hit the main player object, you should see all those things. Awesome. All right, looking good so far. Now we can drag and drop a couple things in. The player body, we know where that is. That's going to be right there. So let's drag and drop that into there. We also have the boom cyan, boom green cyan, or boom green, and then boom gold. We're going to make those in the next video. We also have, though, the text or the time text. We can drag and drop that. That's going to be, I think, right here. Let's go ahead and drag and drop that into time text. There we go. The game over screen, we know where that is. That's going to be the panel game over. I'm going to close that and simply drag and drop it in. Awesome. And then don't forget we have our 2 buttons as well. So I will reopen the panel game over, select the button main menu, scroll down, find where the script is, which is on the main player. So I'm going to simply drag and drop main player there. Perfect. Go to the player script. Let's select the button, which is going to be, this one is the main menu one. So let's find the main menu. There we go. Main menu B. Awesome. Let's do the play again one. Add a function, drag and drop the player in, go to no function, go to player script, and simply do the play again B. Awesome. All right, looking good so far. Oops, looks like I missed the second one for some reason. I'm going to get rid of that one. Make sure you have both buttons set as well. That one's good there, and that one's good. Awesome. All right, looking good so far. In the next video, we'll go ahead and add the particles so we can finish up and practice using the player. Alright, so in this section, we're going to go ahead and create the player particles. We're going to start off by creating the particles themselves, and then we're going to go ahead and add them to the player. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Alright, let's go ahead and get started creating the boom particle system. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click over here. We're going to go ahead and go to Effects, Particle System. Alright, so we're just going to edit this one a couple things on it. Let me see what we need to edit exactly. So we're going to start off with the duration. We're going to set that to 0.1, okay? So we got 0.1 for the duration. We're also going to turn off looping, okay? We're also going to go ahead and we're going to make sure start lifetime is at 5, which it is. Start speed is at 5 as well. Start size, though, we're going to make it a little smaller. We're going to make start size 0.15, okay? Awesome. Then we're also going to make the color. This one will be the basic one first. So I'm going to use the color tool right there and simply make it the same teal color as our player. Awesome. All right. Looks like that's good for that. What else do we want? Gravity modifier. I think we can keep that at that. What else? What else? The simulation speed. We'll keep that at 1. I think we need to change the... No, we do need to change the gravity modifier. We're going to change that to 0. Let's do something like 0.6. I think that'll look pretty good. All right, let's see how that looks real quick. Doesn't show real quick. I think it's because the size is not what I wanted. So duration 1.2, start lifetime 5, start size. There we go. We do want the emission one though, so we're going to go ahead and add something for that. We're going to add a new emission one, so let's add a plus here. All right. Let's hit play now and see how that looks. A little better. I think we might increase the size or maybe make it smaller. Well, for now we'll keep it, we're gonna keep it at 10, we're gonna keep it 0 there. Everything else can stay the same for that. It's good for that. Let's see what the next thing is. We need collision, so we're gonna scroll down. We have to make sure the collision is set, so turn on the collision trigger right there. Let's open that up. So we have bounce at 1. I think that's what we need to keep for it. Yeah, I think that's good for that. Okay. Now, next thing we need to do is, of course, change the item itself. So go to renderer. Let's go ahead and select a new material. We're going to do the default square material. Okay. And then we also need to change the order and layer. Instead of 0, I'm going to make that -1. Okay. Let's see how that looks. It should look a little better. All right. Now we just need to change the shape so it doesn't just go in an up way like that. All right. Let's go ahead and do that. So let's go to the shape. Let's make sure our shape is correct. I'm gonna go up, scroll up, scroll up, scroll up. Here's the shape. Okay, so we have angle of 25. We're gonna change that angle. Well, actually, we're gonna change the entire thing. Instead of a cone, we just want a sphere, so it can be a circle. Let's hit play now. It should be an exploding effect. Actually, that looks really well. Awesome. Let's see how that looks in game view. If I hit restart and get game view, yep, perfect. All right, go back to scene. And one thing just to double check, did we have collision? We did. We have list items planes. I think we need it to be world, actually. That's going to make it affect in the game itself. So let's change that to world. The mode, because this is not a 3D game, we're going to set that to 2D. Let's hit play again. Yep, there we go. Awesome. And you can adjust the bounciness if you want, but I kind of like how it kind of floats around like that. I think that looks pretty good overall. So we have our exploding effect. I think that looks pretty good. Yep, I kind of like it. Okay, so let me go ahead now and rename this one. We're going to call this just Boom Cyan. All right, that's going to be for the color. Awesome. Let's go ahead and make this into a prefab. So we're going to go to the prefabs folder and simply just drag and drop this into there. Awesome. Now, next thing we can do is we can go ahead and paste a new one. So I'm going to delete this one here. Oops, delete the original one, paste it in here. We're going to change the color of this one to the green. So if we go all the way to green, I think it's like that. Yep, it's going to be 00101 for green. Okay, so that's going to be the green one. So let's change the name of that. So we're going to call it Boom Green. Awesome, just like that. One thing to make sure too, remember that Z value sometimes makes it random, so always make sure the Z values are zeroed out. We can also make sure the blue one here is zeroed out as well. Perfect. So we have Boom Green, so let's go ahead, drag and drop that into here. It's going to ask if you want to do the original one or a prefab variant. Make sure you click variant or it's going to overwrite the one we made earlier. Awesome. Once that's done, I'm going to delete this one here, drag and drop this one in here. Now we need the yellow one, so let's go ahead and make the yellow one, which I think is just going to be, yep, 1101. Perfect. We hit play, it should be yellow. Awesome. Let's go ahead, rename it. Boom, we're going to call this Boom Yellow. Or we could call it Boom Gold, that's fine too. Alright, let's go ahead, drag and drop this back into our prefabs. There we go. Prefab variant, and there we go. So now we should have each of those. Awesome. Let's go to the player now. Let's go ahead and drag and drop each one. So we have the cyan one, which is going to be for that one. We have the green one, which is going to be for that one. And we also have the gold one, which is going to be for that one. Okay, awesome. All right, that looks pretty good there. Now, one thing we do need to do is add those tags. If you remember, we had the certain power-up tabs. So we can go ahead and add those as well. We're not going to be setting anything to those, but we do need to set them or we might get an error when we try to play the game. So let me go ahead and make sure we have each of those set. I think we have gold power up and double jump power up and ground. So let's add each one of those. So let's go ahead and let's do the double jump power up, I think is what we called it. Yeah, make sure the capitals are all correct or it's not going to work. All right, we want the ground one, so let's do ground. All right, and we have the ground, we have the gold power up. Oh no, we don't have the gold power up, we need that one. So gold power up. I think it looked like that. Might need to double check it. And then we also had spike. Let's do spike. I think it was lowercase actually for that one. Spike. And then I think we had one more, which was for the game over one, I think. Or it was out of bounds. So let's go ahead and add that as well. That was out of bounds, just like that. I'm pretty sure is how we did it. Make sure you have that there, perfect. All right, and we have block, yep. Okay, make sure you have all those there, perfect. We don't need to set anything for those, but if we're gonna test the game, we might need that. Another thing we need to do is actually set the ground. So we haven't done that yet though. So we can do that though pretty quickly with the ground here. So we have untagged for this stuff. We have blocks that are all tagged, but we do need to set the actual ground one. So how I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna add a component. I'm gonna add a box collider 2D. We're gonna make this one the triggered one. Okay, just like that. Then we just need to extend it. So I'm simply going to extend it just to the end of this one here. And we should be good with that. Doesn't need to be perfect, just pretty close. Make sure this one is triggered though, okay? Needs to be triggered for it to make it work. All right, so then if we go ahead and hit play, we should see the actual gameplay. And we can test some things out. So we have the player. Looks like it's not going to evaluate that we're spinning. Oops, looks like I also left the booms in here as well. We can actually get rid of those. So boom, let's go ahead and just get rid of that for now. We don't need that real quick. We do though need to see what's going on with the player. So if we go to the, where is the player? The player here. Let's see what's going on. I'm in pause mode. It should say spinning equals true, which it does not. Let's see why not. Might be because we didn't set the trigger for the ground high enough. So let's go ahead and go to ground. Yeah, I don't think we set that high enough. That one is triggered. Oh, we never set the tag for it. Make sure you do that. So I'm gonna hit play off there. Make sure we set that to ground, which is right here. Awesome. All right, now if we go ahead and hit play, that should work. Let's see how it works. And looks like our spinning is still not set. Let's see what's going on here. Yep, ground is still not set. Oh, spinning's equal true. So we have that set. Oh, you know what? I don't think we added the actual velocity yet or anything like that. So we have collider, X value set. Where's the actual, here we go. Velocity is 1. So what if we change that to, what if we change that to like 4? And we keep that there. Let's go ahead and hit play again. Yep, now we can actually jump. Might need to adjust it, but overall it looks like it's working pretty well. It's not going to work past this part because we didn't put the ground for the next one. So we can try that also if you want. Let's go ahead and go to prefabs. Let's go to the ground itself. Let's go ahead and add a component. We'll do box collider 2D. There we go. Make that triggered, and then of course move that all the way to the end of it, which should be right about there. It doesn't need to be perfect, just pretty close to it. Awesome. It should automatically save. Make sure you set it to trigger, yes, and then also don't forget we need to add the ground tag. Awesome. All right, let's go back. Let's go ahead, and before we hit play, I might make the jump a little bit higher also. Let's set that to like 4. All right. We might need to set it to 6, just depending. Yeah, it looks like it's not up all the way. I might actually, just to make it a little better, I might go ahead and edit the player's gravity. So let's make that, I'm gonna make that 10, but I am gonna set the gravity to 2. Okay, so it doesn't do like a floating. I want it to like really drop down once it's done jumping in the air. Let's try that. All right. Yep, I like that a lot better. Awesome. Perfect. That looks pretty good. It looks like it's working pretty well. I like it. Let's see why we still have explodings. That's because the boom gold is still there. Let's delete that. Awesome. All right, things are looking good so far. Make sure to save. Awesome. All right, so in this section, we're going to go ahead and create the camera script. We're going to start off by creating the camera object itself, and then we're going to go ahead and add some functionality for it. Let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and create the actual camera script itself. So I'm going to go ahead, select the main camera. All right, once you're on the main camera, let's go ahead down to add component. We're going to call this camera script. There we go, new script. Create and add. Let that load. Might take a second. I'm going to minimize it, so continue loading. Almost there. Perfect. Let's go back to assets, drag and drop that camera script into the camera folder, or the scripts folder. There we go. Make sure it still opens up. Looks like it did not. Let's go ahead and let that load. Double click it again, and there you go. Awesome. This is going to be a pretty short script, nothing too big. We're just going to add a couple variables and then a little code. So let me add the variables first at the top. Let's go ahead and add that right here. So we have the variables being used. Let me get rid of those doubles. All right, so we have the public game object to follow, which is going to be our player, of course. And then we also have the public float speed of 2.0 f. All right, we can adjust that if you want to, but I think this looks pretty good and pretty smooth for what we're working with. So make sure you have that there. Now we need the actual code that makes it follow. So let's go ahead and add that in. That's going to be in our void update because it's going to continuously update throughout our game. So I'm going to add that right here. Awesome. All right, so starting off, we're going to have a float interpolation variable, and we're going to equal that to speed times time dot delta time. So basically, we're just equaling it times whatever the game time is, okay? So we need that to know how fast to go, depending on the speed of the game. We also need the vector3 position, so we need x, y, and z value of that object we're following, which is going to be our current object of this dot transform position. So we're getting that value of our current camera, and then we're going to move it specifically on the x and y that we want. So we're going to have the position of y set to math.lerp this dot transform y. So we're getting the y value of our current position, all right, to the object to follow dot transform dot position y interpolation, so the speed of the current time of the game. All right, so this here is basically all it's doing is getting our y position of our object and equaling it to our current position. All right, or we're not equal, yeah, we are equaling it to our y position. So we're getting the y position of that object to follow, and then we're going to equal it to the position y. Okay, same thing here. We're just doing position.x using mathf.lerp. Same thing. We're getting the x position of our current object, and then we're going to equaling it, or we're getting it from the position of the object we're following it. Okay, so basically this is just doing the following calculations for us. Okay, so once we have that x and y value connected or collected, then we're going to go ahead and do this dot transform position equals position. This is just a pretty smooth way I found to make our camera follow the object. So I like this one a lot. There's many other ways to do this, but I think this one works pretty well for the type of game we're making. Okay, so make sure you have all this down. Again, you can copy and paste it from the source code. That's completely up to you. I'm going to save this. All right, once it's saved, I'm going to go back to our original game, let that load. Once it loads, then we simply have to drag and drop in where our player is. All right, so we have our main camera. We scroll to the bottom, we have object to follow. And if you remember, we had a specific point on our player. So I'm going to take that point and put it right over here. Awesome. All right, so now if we go ahead and hit play, we can see that it's going to move the camera based on where our player is. So it's going to be right here, which I like, because now we can see exactly what's coming in front of us, okay? I like that. All right, awesome. All right, so far so good. I like it. I think our block's moving a little fast here, but actually I think it's okay. All right, we can adjust that later, but for now I think this looks pretty good for what we're doing. All right, so far so good. All right, don't forget to save. All right, so in this section, we're going to go ahead and create the spikes. We're going to start off creating these spike objects themselves. Then we're going to go ahead and ensure the obstacles have spikes on them. Let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start off creating some of those spikes. So I'm going to go ahead and back up here a little bit. All right, so we're going to create a bottom spikes row, and then we can also create some for some of the objects coming at us. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and select the triangle we have right here. I'm going to Control D it. All right, and I'm going to make that duplication one somewhere right about here. We'll make it pretty low because I don't want to see the top platforms once we fall down. We also are going to have a square for it as well, so I'm going to Control D for the square. All right, so let's go ahead and add a couple of these things. So first I'm going to put this one about here. I'm going to add that triangle, or the other triangle, which is this one. I'm going to add that on top of our duplicated square. I'm going to make that main square. I'm just going to call this floor, or we could actually even call it out of bounds area. There we go. We also will go ahead and make the color red, just so we know it is the out of bounds. So make it red like that. Perfect. Let's get that triangle, and we're going to go ahead and put that directly on top of it. So I'm going to make the x value 0, and then I'm going to move it pretty close just so it's like resting on it. We can make it go in a little bit, but not too much. So it looks pretty good. Maybe something like that would look okay. All right, we're also going to make this one red as well, just like that. Awesome. All right, let's back up a little bit. Okay, now we need to, of course, duplicate these a little bit, and you know the way we're doing it isn't going to work. We're going to need another square. So what I'm going to do is take that triangle out actually, and then just go ahead and select both of these and Control D so we can duplicate both of them and move them in just like that. Awesome. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put everything inside of the block now. So let's go ahead and take triangle there, triangle there, and the out of bounds duplicated block. Awesome. So now if we want to do it, we can just go ahead and select the two that we have like that, and just Control D all the way over. So let's do that, Control D, and just keep adding these over about similar areas like that. Perfect. Just until we get all the way across. And just to make it a little faster, we could duplicate them like that as well. So Control D, let's move them over. Control D, move them over. Control D, move them over. Awesome. Doesn't need to be perfect, just as long as we're covering the whole entire of the screen. So what I might do also, just to make it a little more centered, let's move it like that. Awesome. All right, next up is we need the actual ground on these so our player doesn't just fall through and go forever. So let's go ahead, and for the block ones, I'm going to highlight just the blocks for now, if I can grab them all. There we go. Just the blocks, I think, is what we got. There we go. Let's go ahead and give them a box collider. So let's do box collider 2D. Awesome. And we'll keep those untagged. We just want that box collider on all just the blocks. As for the triangles, though, we're going to add a couple things for those. Let me make sure I got all of them, though. There we go. For all the triangles, though, we're going to give them the out of bounds tag, which is out of bounds. There we go. And we're going to give these ones also, we could do a box collider also. Or better yet, we could give them a, what do you call those ones? A collider, triangle collider. I think it is I think it's polygon collider actually. Yep, polygon collider, there we go. Polygon collider 2D. All right, just so it actually goes around all the corners like that. All right, make sure you have that for that, perfect. But the one thing we need to set for these is the trigger needs to be set for true, okay? So make sure that your thing is like that, okay? And just so we can test this out, what I might do is I might go grab the player and just put him below there. So let's go ahead and grab the player, just move him right here for now. And we can just see him drop, and then we can make sure that these work correctly, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. Let that load, and there we go, we explode, and the game over happens. Awesome, I like it. All right, so far so good, perfect. Let's hit play again. All right, let's move him back. I'm gonna Control Z, there we go, back to the original spot, awesome. All right, so now we need ones for the actual game. So let's go ahead and make sure the ground, this first ground, I don't really want anything on it, but for the spawning grounds, we can add some things. So let's go ahead and go to the, where is it, prefabs folder, there we go. All right, for this one here, we can go into this one. And what we could do is make a prefab for the triangle and just put them on here so we can avoid them as the player. So let's go back over here. Let's go select one of the triangles. Doesn't really matter which one you use. I'm gonna go ahead and drag and drop that into here. And I'm gonna rename it. So instead of triangle, we might have to click into it. Let's call this spike. Okay. And then we could just say, yeah, rename file, there we go. Tag, we need to change that to the spike tag. Awesome, just like that. Let's go back. All right, let's go ahead and go back into one of the grounds. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna simply drag and drop one of these into our main ground. And I'm gonna move it somewhere just so we can practice. I'm gonna move one there, that's fine. You can move them actually wherever you want. I'm just gonna put them in a couple different locations so we can just avoid them. I'm just gonna have two. I think that's pretty good for now. Later on we can add different ones if we want, but I think that should be good. Okay, awesome. All right, let's go back. And I think they're here, so what we could do is I'm gonna make this one, the starting one, not have any on it, because I think we were still messing with this one here. So if I go ahead and delete, it shouldn't be affected, because if we go back to this one, it should stay. Awesome. All right, perfect. Let's go ahead now and hit play and see what happens. We should have some new ones spawning with spikes on them, so we can see how that looks. So we go like this. We should see some spikes. There we go. Then we can go ahead and avoid them. Oh, well, actually, we forgot to add certain things on that to make our player move, which we need to do. Let's go back to the ground. I think we forgot to add the ground trigger. Nope, we have that there. Ground trigger is set. Why were we not able to jump? Let's go back. Let's go back over here. Let's select our player. Let's make sure everything's set. Hit play again. I don't think it liked when we deleted those things. Let's just see what's going on. So we are in spinning. Yep, we're still able to jump. Okay. Looks like we can die also, and the game will end. Perfect. Let's hit play again and just make sure everything still works. For some reason I wasn't able to jump. Looks like I'm still able to jump this. That's pretty good. There we go. Looks like we had an issue. What happened there? I think what happened is we're a little too close and we're getting like multiple block counts. So if I select this and I go to the clone one, there is triggered ground. We need to add a jumping effect. Okay, so what we could do to fix this problem is we could just move it down a little bit. So let's go to the ground spawner, and I don't want it to be so close, so let's go like there and see how that looks. Let's hit play. Or maybe we didn't add it all the way, but we'll see. So we have this here, we can jump here. We can go ahead and jump here. Yep, we're still able to jump. Awesome. Looks like they're spawning a little too fast, so we might need to slow them down. Awesome, but overall it's working pretty well. So let's do that. Let's kind of figure out which spawning we can do for that. So what if we go to the ground spawner? Where is that? Ground spawner. We're going to change the max time. I'm going to change that to 8. Let's see how that looks. Let's go ahead. And all I want to do is I want to make sure the next one isn't exactly on the same one. So we can have a little bit of separation in case we want to fall down. And that we won't get messed up for the collision of it as well. So we have that there. Looks like it's still a little close, but we're still able to jump, so that's good. Let's see if it's still close. It might still be. Yep. We could honestly make that the same, but yeah, it looks like that's where the problem is we're exiting it and also staying in it. So we need to make it a little bit longer. Let's go to ground spawner. Let's make that, maybe we'll do it as a 9. Let's try that again. And I think it should be good though with that. So let's go ahead, and there we go. We got a little bit of distance here. I like it because we could still fall in if we're not careful enough. We could go there. Awesome. Go there. And that's a little bigger, so we might need to make it a little smaller. Still kind of works though, but overall it's still working the way I want it to, and we can still end the game. Awesome. All right, so let's try, instead of 9, we'll do like 8.5. 8.5, and that should be good. Now another thing is I kind of want to make these platforms go a little faster, so I might actually make that go faster with the ground. Let's go ahead and make that, instead of a 3, what do we do, like a 5? Let's go back to the original one and make that one also a 5. Oh, I guess it already is at 5. This one I guess wasn't at 5, it was only at 3. So that's at 5. Now it's matched up. This one here is still at 5. Awesome. Let's hit play. Yep, now they might be a little messed up. We might have to recalibrate the actual ground spawning of it. All right, that looks pretty good to me. All right, let's make sure it still spawns correctly though, because it might not. Yep, looks like it's a little too slow now, so now we need to increase it. It's a little bit of a game we have to play with these, but eventually we'll get it correct. All right, let's do 5 for this now. And I think this should be good. Now you can adjust this as you want. Maybe you want the platforms to move faster or slower. That's completely up to you. All right, so far I like it how it is. We got that looking good. Maybe we need a little longer. That's a little too close, I think. Let's try it again. Let's do 6. And I think we should be good with this. All right. After this, I think we only have one more thing. That's going to be the actual powers up. So we'll do those, and then we should have the full game. All right. Ooh, that's way too long. So 5 was way too close. What do we do? 5.5. That might be good. Let's try that one more time. All right, that spawns like that. It's not that bad. It's a little better, but I kind of want to make it the same. So that looks pretty good there. Looking good. I kind of like it though. It's not that bad. I just think the first one's a little too close. So what we could do is just kind of move this one over a little bit. I could just go to the, where's the ground here, move that over just a little bit, just so it's about the same. Maybe a little bit more actually. And also, if we want to make the game look a little bit more realistic, we can change these colors of these ones back to white because they don't need to be the same color. So I'm going to go ahead, oopsie, looks like I changed it from the back color. Let's make that go white. Let's also make this one go white as well. And these two over here. just like that. Awesome. All right, now if we hit play, it should look like we want it. All right, let's let that load. Looking good. Go ahead, jump there. Perfect. Awesome. I like it. I like it. Looks like it's a little farther, but I think it looks pretty good over there, although I don't really dislike it. Awesome. Not bad. And we could just move the whole thing over a little bit and we should be good. All right. Awesome. But I'm going to stop messing with it because I think it looks pretty good. Awesome. All right. Don't forget to save. All right. So in this section, we're going to go ahead and create the power-ups. We're going to create the objects themselves, and then we're going to ensure they're working correctly. Let's go ahead and jump right in. All right. Let's go ahead and create the power-ups. We're going to start off creating one for the double jump and then the other one for the gold. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. I'm going to close out the ground there so we don't need that. All right, so we're going to use one of these squares for our power up. So I'm going to Control D it. All right, we're going to call this one, we could call this one the power up for double jump. So double jump power up, just like that. Awesome. I'm going to make this one the color of green. So let's go ahead, slide it over to green real quick. And I think it's at, that one should be at 1. This should be 0. And this should also be 0. Okay, so it should be 0, 1, 0, 1. Okay, awesome. We have that there. Next thing we're going to do is set the tag. If you remember, we need double jump power up tag, so make sure that's set there. And last but not least, we're going to need a box collider 2D. So go ahead, box collider 2D, and make it triggered. Okay, awesome. Next thing we're going to do is actually put it inside the ground. So just for testing purposes, I'm going to put it in the starting one. All right, and then I'm simply going to put this one somewhere like right here. All right, I think it should be pretty good. So we jump into it, we should get the double jump power up. All right, so let's go ahead and hit play and see what happens. Let that load. So we jump into it, there we go, now we're green. And if we do it, there we go, we have a double jump. Awesome. So now we can have a double jump power up. That's pretty cool. And we have the little green. Let's make sure it goes away though after the 15 seconds. Once it does, then we should go back to the original color and only be able to use one jump, just like that. Awesome. All right, perfect. So far, so good. All right, next up, we're going to do the next power up. So I'm going to go ahead and save this one as a prefab. Let's go into prefabs. I'm going to drag and drop this into there so we can use it later if we want to. I'm going to go ahead and now edit this one as we want it. So instead of double jump, I'm going to just call this gold power up. All right, change the tag. We're going to do the gold power up. I'm going to go ahead and change this one to gold now, which is just, I think, 1101. Awesome. Let's go ahead, close that. Everything else can stay the same. Let's go ahead and hit play. Make sure that loads. Once it does, we should be good. Let's see what happens. We turn gold when we run into it. Awesome. We still can only jump once, but now if we run into these things, we're not going to get hurt by them, okay? But if we do run into the floor, though, we should still be able to explode with gold. All right, so let's see what happens if I miss the jump. I go down. And there we go, now it's gold. All right, and it should do the same thing for the green one as well. All right, let's check the green one, make sure that one works as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and simply put this one after it, because remember, once we hit, or actually it's not gonna do that unless I put it inside the ground. Make sure it's in the ground, there we go. Once we hit the yellow one, it should replace it though with the green one. So let's make sure that works as well, because if it doesn't, then we're gonna have a problem. So let's go ahead, make sure we can run into that one. And there we go, awesome, we're green as well. And we shouldn't have the invincibility anymore, just like that, awesome. All right, so far so good, I like it. Let's go ahead and turn that off. All right, and what we could do also, just so we can get the power-ups later on, we could maybe create a whole new ground for each one and have an individual ground style that has the type of power-up. But let's go ahead and remove the green one there. That's not the green one, that's the green one. Let's drag and drop this into our prefab so we can use it later. Prefab variant, just to make sure, perfect. I'm going to remove this one as well. And awesome. All right, there you go. Now you should have power-ups. So far, so good. All right, so in this section, we're going to do a final cleanup. We're going to build some more ground platforms to make it harder for the player. And we're also going to go ahead and just ensure all the functionality works. Let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Let's create some more ground platforms real quick. So that's pretty easy. We're just simply going to duplicate our current one here. Or we can actually paste in a new one because it won't have the little blue. Let's do that instead. There we go. So we have this one here. Let's go ahead and rename this one. Instead of ground 1, I can just go ahead and call this ground 2 if we want to, actually. That's fine too. It can be anything, to be honest. All right, so we have this one here. The only difference for this one I want to do is I want to give it one of the power-ups. So I'm going to give it a green power-up, and I'm going to put it somewhere like right in the middle, like right there. All right, awesome. We can also go ahead and duplicate this one as well. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this one. This will be the 3 one. I'm just going to move this up for now. Now for this one, I'm going to make it a little difficult, or let's make it have some more blocks on it. So I'm going to take one of the blocks, Control D, and I'm simply going to just move this one up. Maybe we could do something like this, where we put a block spike floating, and then we can go ahead and add a little spike to the top of it, so you have to kind of dodge it. I think that'd be kind of cool. So let's do that. Doesn't have to be perfect. Let's grab a triangle or a spike, Control D. I'm going to go ahead and put this one somewhere like right there for now. Let's flip it over so we could do a 180 on it. And then if we see the game view, or well, we can't see the game view because it's above the screen. I just want to make sure it's centered, so let's zoom in a little bit. Maybe add something like that for this one. All right, awesome. We could do that for that. And just to make it a little bit more difficult, we could Control D and just add another one in the front there as well. Awesome, and a Control D for one more right there. So you're gonna have to avoid them. I think it'll be kind of cool. All right, awesome. We could remove this if we want. We don't really need that. That's okay. All right, so now we have those ground types. We could do one more now for the yellow one. So maybe we could add a duplicate of this one as well. Let's do that. Control D on that one, move that one up. And let's add a yellow block into this one here, just like that. And I'm gonna put that, let's put that like right in the middle also. I like that. And perfect. All right, so now we have a couple different ground types. I'm gonna close them all up so we can see them all. We have 2, 3, 4, and the number 1. Here we go. So let's make these all into prefabs. So let's go ahead, drag and drop this into here. It's gonna ask for original or variant. Let's keep that at variant. Let's do the third one. We're gonna do prefab variant. There we go. And then let's do the fourth one. Let's do prefab variant. Awesome. So now we have 4 different types of grounds. Let's delete that, and delete that. Awesome. Let's go ahead now and actually put these inside of the ground spawner. So over here, we'll open that up. Make sure we have 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Drag and drop each one into each one. And remember, since the script already calculates a random one, we won't need to edit anything. We just need to drag and drop them in. All right, perfect. Let's go ahead now and hit play and make sure there's some random ones spawning. We'll just have to play it for a second or two to make sure that most of them spawn, or all of them, whatever we want to see. So we have our current player, we're jumping along. So the first one here. Let's see what the next one is. Looks like it's the number 3. Awesome, has the number 3 one. Looks like that one's a little more difficult. Perfect. We also have the original one again. I just want to make sure that it's going to spawn all of them. Now it might get to the point where it does spawn the same one over and over again sometimes, but that's just because it's going by random and we only have 4. So in the real game we'd probably have a lot more than just 4, but I think for now this looks pretty good. We have the invincibility one. We also can collect that double jump power up. Perfect. I think that was all of them, I'm pretty sure. I don't think maybe the third one spawned yet, but it looks like it is spawning most of them randomly. All right, awesome. All right, so far so good. I like it. And there we go, game over there. Let's see if we can go to main menu. Awesome, and looks like our main menu also has the high score text. Let's see if we can go back to play game, and there we go. Awesome. All right, things are looking good, pretty good. I like it. All right, don't forget to save. One more thing I noticed actually is that we don't have a normal platform for the main menu. I noticed that when we're running it in main menu, it's actually creating the one with spikes. So what we want to do is we want to create one more. So let's do that, and simply all we need to do is actually just create one and then just delete the little spikes on it, just like that. Oops, Control Z. Delete just the spikes. And then what we'll do is we will go ahead and rename this actually. We're going to call this main menu ground. All right, and then simply create that into a prefab. There we go. Awesome. And then what we're going to do is we're going to save everything. I should have done that earlier anyway. Go back to the script or scenes, go to main menu, and what we're going to do, one is simply get rid of the ones on this because we don't want that. So take the little guys. If I can zoom in a little bit. Yeah, delete those there. You could keep the spikes if you want to, but I think it's going to look a little better. And all we want to do is make sure it has the right prefab, which we made one specifically for the main menu. And just like that. Awesome. So now we should be set. If we go ahead and turn this on, it should only spawn that one there, not the one with the spikes. Yep, perfect. All right, I like it. All right, so far so good. One more thing I noticed, just a quick little fix, is make sure that you go up to the top left, go all the way down to build settings, and make sure we drag and drop our game scene in, because we currently only have the main menu scene, which is 0, but we also need that game scene in there as well, which will make it 1. All right, awesome. Make sure you have that there, then go ahead and just close it, and you should be set. Congrats on making it to the end of the course. We've created an endless runner game. As seen, we have this little main menu here with the title of our game. We also have the high score count, a little background effect, and also our play game button. Once we play the play game button, we'll be jumped into the game. We're this little rolling block here, avoiding these little triangles, while also maintaining to stay on top of these platforms. Once we run into the platform items, as seen, it changes it into our color. We also have a couple different power-ups in the game, such as the double jump power-up and also the gold power-up. We are going to have multiple platforms coming at our player, which are going to be set in random amounts, which makes the game a little bit more difficult. If we run into one of these little triangles, though, we get this little game over scene. It'll stop our score and then give us the 2 buttons of playing again or going back to main menu. All right, see you next time.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss any update.